Hello, my dear listeners. A warm welcome to another story that will stir your hearts deeply. Today, I will tell you the story of a young woman, just 21 years old, who, on a stormy night, found something that would change her life forever. Something that would make her discover a love so powerful she never knew it existed within her. You are about to meet Letícia, a pure, orphaned girl who lived a simple life until the day fate placed the responsibility of saving an innocent life into her hands. And when a billionaire discovered what she had done, well, let's just say that the tears he shed in that moment revealed a side of him that no one had ever seen. But is such a love possible? Can a pure heart truly touch the soul of someone who had closed himself off to the world? And what happens when the past returns to claim its price? Before we begin, I want to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart for being here with me, for choosing to spend your time listening to these stories that speak directly to the soul. You are the reason I do this with so much love. And tell me something. What are you up to this weekend while you listen to our story? Are you taking the chance to relax on the sofa and get a little emotional? Are you doing that weekend cleaning and want something pleasant to listen to? Or maybe you're just enjoying a lazy day, curled up in bed with nowhere to be. However, you're spending these days of rest, I'm so happy you've chosen to be here with me. And now, let us begin our story. Prepare your hearts, because what you are about to hear will show you that true love still exists in this world. Letícia Santoso awoke that Friday with the same tightness in her chest she had felt every morning for 5 years, ever since her grandmother had passed away, leaving her utterly alone in the world. At 21, she had already faced more pain than many people endure in a lifetime, but she still managed to find the strength to get out of bed and face another day. The alarm clock read 5:30 a.m., and she knew another day of hard work lay ahead. Letícia was the kind of person who didn't know how to complain about life, even when it seemed to be conspiring against her at every turn. She rose slowly from the old mattress that lay directly on the floor of her small, one-room apartment on the outskirts of São Paulo. The place was exceedingly simple, but it was all she could afford. With the money she earned working as a cleaner 3 times a week and selling homemade savory pastries on the other days. The peeling walls and cold cement floor told the story of a life of hardship. But Letícia always kept everything meticulously clean and organized. She had learned from her grandmother that poverty was no excuse for neglect, and that a home could be humble, but it must always be dignified. Her routine was always the same: wake up early, take a quick shower that sometimes didn't even run hot, have a simple breakfast of coffee and bread, and head to Donna Marina's house, where she worked on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, cleaning an enormous mansion in the city's affluent neighborhood. Letícia didn't mind the hard work. In fact, she even enjoyed keeping things organized and clean. But what hurt her the most was the way Donna Marina spoke to her, as if she were inferior, as if she weren't a person just like her. As she tidied the employer's kitchen that morning, Letícia had no idea it would be her last day in that house. She was mopping the floor when she heard Donna Marina's shrill voice shouting her name from upstairs. "Letícia, get up here, Now! The young woman ran up the stairs, afraid she had done something wrong, and found her employer holding a pearl necklace, an expression of rage on her face that Letícia had never seen before. "Where did you put the other pearls from this necklace?" Donna Marina asked, her voice so cold it made Leticia's heart pound with fear. "I didn't touch anything, Donna Marina. I only cleaned the vanity, just as you asked," Letícia replied, her voice trembling, not understanding what was happening. The older woman looked at her with contempt and said something that cut the young woman's heart like a knife. "I should have known I couldn't trust a girl of your kind. You stole the missing pearls? I'm sure of it." Letícia felt the world crumble around her. She had never in her life stolen so much as a piece of candy from a child, let alone someone's jewelry. "I didn't steal anything, Donna Marina. I swear to God. I didn't take anything from you," she said, tears welling in her eyes. But her employer had already decided she was guilty. "It's no use lying. You're fired, and I won't be paying you for today. You're lucky I'm not calling the police." Letícia gathered her few belongings and left that house with a broken heart, not because she had lost her job, but because she had been accused of something so terrible. The journey home seemed longer than ever. Letícia walked through the crowded streets, yet she felt completely invisible, like a ghost wandering through the world. She had always been a very religious girl. Her grandmother had taught her to trust in God, even in the most difficult of times. But on that day, it was hard to understand why bad things happened to good people. When she got home, she threw herself onto her bed and cried as she hadn't cried in a long time, not just for the injustice she had suffered, but for feeling so profoundly alone. Letícia had lost her parents when she was just 16 in a car accident that turned her life upside down in an instant. An only child, she went to live with her maternal grandmother, Donna Rosa, a woman of great faith who worked as a nanny for wealthy children and who raised her granddaughter with immense love, teaching her about character and dignity. Her grandmother always said that true beauty came from within, that the most important thing in life was to have a pure heart, and that God had special plans for good people. When Donna Rosa died 3 years later, a victim of a cancer discovered too late, Letícia found herself alone in the world at 19, with no family, no money, and no prospects. The only things her grandmother had left her were that small, paid-off apartment and an unshakable faith that everything would work out in the end. Letícia had never dated, never been kissed, never had any kind of intimate experience with a man. It wasn't for lack of opportunity, for she was a very beautiful young woman with straight brown hair, honey-colored eyes, and a sweet smile that could light up any room. The problem was that Letícia was terrified of giving herself to someone only to be abandoned, as she had been so many times in her life. She guarded her heart and her body as if they were treasures, waiting to find someone who truly deserved the pure love she had to offer. Her grandmother always said that a woman's virginity was a gift to be given only to the man of her life, and Letícia took that advice to heart. She dreamed of getting married in a church, having children, and building the family she had always yearned for. That Friday afternoon, after crying her heart out, Letícia got up and decided she wouldn't sit around feeling sorry for herself. She had some ingredients at home and resolved to make a batch of cocinas, to sell at the neighborhood square over the weekend. It was how she supplemented her income when money was tight. And now that she'd lost her job, she had to chase after any source of income she could find. As she made the dough and prepared the filling, she spoke to God, asking for the strength to overcome this latest hardship and trusting that He had something better in store for her. Night arrived with a sky heavy with dark clouds that promised rain. Letícia was just finishing packaging the pastries when she began to hear the first rumbles of thunder. She looked out the window and saw that the weather was turning truly ugly, with strong winds shaking the trees and lightning tearing across the sky. Well, at least there won't be much business at the square tomorrow, she thought, knowing that rain always kept customers away. But Letícia couldn't imagine that the approaching storm was about to bring something into her life that would change everything forever. Something that would lead her to discover a love greater than anything she had ever felt. The rain began to fall around 8 o'clock that evening, gently at first, as if the sky were testing the strength of its droplets. But then it came down with a violence Letícia had never seen before. The wind rattled the apartment windows, and the thunder was so loud it sounded as if it were exploding right on top of the building. She was sitting on her bed, mending a hole in her only pair of jeans, when the lights went out, plunging everything into complete darkness. My goodness, what a storm, Letícia murmured, fumbling blindly for her phone to use its flashlight. The battery was almost dead, but it was enough for her to find a candle she kept for emergencies. The candle's weak flame cast strange shadows on the walls, and the sound of the rain pounding on the roof was so intense it seemed as if the water would break through and flood her apartment. Letícia covered herself with a thin blanket and waited for the storm to pass, praying to God to protect everyone who was out on the streets at that moment. Around 10 o'clock, as the rain was starting to ease, Letícia heard a different kind of noise from outside. It sounded like someone was rummaging through the building's trash, and she thought it might be a homeless person looking for food or shelter. She always had a soft spot for vulnerable people, and even considered going down to offer the pastries she had made. But with the heavy rain and no lights in the building, it was too dangerous to go out. It was then that she heard something that made her heart leap into her throat. A faint cry, almost a whimper, coming from below her window. It wasn't the cry of an adult or even an older child. It was a very specific sound, one she recognized instantly, even though she had never been around babies. Oh, dear God, there's a baby down there, she said to herself, jumping up from the bed and rushing to the window. The rain was still falling, but it was lighter now, and she could hear the cry more clearly. Letícia didn't think twice. She grabbed her phone's flashlight, even with its dying battery, threw a coat over her clothes, and ran down the building's stairs. The front gate had been blown slightly ajar by the wind, and she stepped right out onto the sidewalk, where the residents' trash cans were kept. The cry was coming from behind the large dumpster. When she shone the light of her phone, she almost fainted at what she saw. Inside a cardboard box, soaked through with rain, lay a newborn baby, so tiny it could fit in the palm of her hand, completely wet and shivering with cold. The little creature was wrapped in a dirty, torn towel, and the umbilical cord was still attached, but it had been crudely cut, jagged, and unclean. The baby was crying with a voice so weak it barely made a sound, and Letícia saw that its skin was pale, almost bluish. clear signs of hypothermia. My God, who could do such a thing? Leticia said, tears streaming down her face as she lifted the baby into her arms with all the care in the world. The child was so light, it felt like a broken bird, and she could feel its little bones through the thin skin. It's okay, my love. Auntie is here now. Nothing is going to happen to you, she whispered, even as she knew the baby was in grave condition. Leticia ran back up to her apartment, holding the baby against her chest, trying to transfer her own body heat to the tiny creature who was freezing to death. When she got inside, the first thing she did was remove the baby's wet wrappings and see that he was a little boy. She took one of her own t-shirts, which was dry and clean, and wrapped him in it with all the tenderness she could muster. I need to get you to a hospital, she said, but at that same moment, she remembered she didn't even have money for the bus fare, let alone for medical treatment. The nearest public hospital was far away, and with the storm and no buses running, it would be impossible to get there. What do I do? Oh God, please help me, she pleaded, looking down at the baby, who had stopped crying but was now breathing very faintly. Leticia remembered a few things she had seen in movies and on television shows about first aid. She heated some water in a pan, poured it into a plastic bottle, and wrapped it in a towel to make a makeshift hot water bottle. Then, she placed the baby on her chest, skin to skin, and covered them both with every blanket she owned. Stay with me, my love. Auntie will take care of you, she repeated, like a prayer, stroking the baby's bald little head. He was perfect, even in his condition. He had minuscule fingers, transparent nails, and when he opened his eyes, Leticia saw they were very light, almost blue. You're an angel. Did you know that? An angel that God sent to me, she said, feeling an immediate connection with this tiny creature who had arrived in her life so unexpectedly. Throughout the long night, Leticia didn't sleep a wink. She stayed awake, monitoring the baby's breathing, checking to see if he was warming up, cleaning his umbilical cord with warm water, and doing everything in her power to keep him alive. Around 5 in the morning, as day was beginning to break, the baby started to cry again. But this time, it was a stronger cry, more like that of a healthy child. Oh, thank God. You're hungry, aren't you, my love? Leticia said, noticing the baby was making little movements with his mouth, as if searching for something to nurse on. She knew that newborns needed to be fed every few hours, but she had no milk, no formula at home. What am I going to do? How am I going to feed you? And then something happened that Leticia would never be able to fully explain for the rest of her life. She was holding the baby, and he was crying from hunger when she felt a strange sensation in her chest, as if her own body was responding to the child's cries. Without truly understanding what was happening, driven more by instinct than by any knowledge she possessed, she unbuttoned her blouse and brought the baby to her breast. To her utter astonishment, after a few moments, he began to nurse. Leticia couldn't believe it. She was a virgin, had never been pregnant, had never had a child, yet there she was, breastfeeding a baby as if she were the most natural mother in the world. This can only be a miracle, she whispered, tears of emotion streaming down her face. The baby nursed for about 15 minutes and then fell asleep in her arms, his breathing calm, his little face a healthy pink. a stark contrast to the deathly pallor it held when she found him. Leticia gazed at the sleeping creature and felt a burst of love in her heart she had never known. It was as if her maternal instinct had awakened all at once, as if she had been born to be this baby's mother. I don't know who you are, my prince, or who could have abandoned you like this, but as long as I'm alive, you will want for nothing. I will take care of you as if you were my own son, she promised, kissing his forehead with infinite tenderness. In that moment, Letitia had no idea she was making a vow that would completely alter the course of her life, and that this baby, who had arrived on a stormy night, would be the key to a love she never imagined could exist. The 3 months that followed were the most intense and transformative of Leticia's life. She named the baby Gabriel, believing he had been sent by God, like an angel, to change her. The boy grew healthy and strong in her arms, and with each passing day, the love between them deepened and became more real. Leticia had become a mother overnight, and it seemed she was born for it. The miracle of her lactation continued daily. Despite being a virgin who had never experienced a pregnancy, her body responded to the baby's needs as if she were his biological mother. She searched online and discovered rare cases of women who could breastfeed through hormonal stimulation caused by contact with an infant. But to her, this was more than science. It was a clear sign that God had brought her and Gabriel together for a special purpose. Their routine was intense, but filled with joy. Gabriel would wake every 3 hours to feed, and Leticia never once complained about the lost sleep, because every moment with him was a gift. She talked to him constantly, telling him stories, singing him lullabies her grandmother used to sing to her. And Gabriel would always watch her with his clear eyes, which seemed to understand her every word. You're my prince. Did you know that, Gabriel? You came into Mommy's life like a gift from heaven, she would say, while changing his diaper or bathing him in the small basin she had bought. Gabriel always smiled when he heard her voice, and Leticia was sure that he knew she wasn't his mother by blood, but his mother by heart, which was far more important. Money was a constant problem. Leticia had sold nearly all her belongings to buy diapers, creams, clothes, and the other necessities Gabriel required. She sold the only ring she had inherited from her grandmother, her small television, even some of the furniture in her apartment. All that mattered was that Gabriel had everything a baby needed to grow up healthy and happy. During the day, while Gabriel slept, Leticia would make savory pastries to sell in the neighborhood square. She carried the baby in her arms or in a makeshift sling she had fashioned from cloth, and customers always melted seeing the two of them together. What a beautiful baby. He looks just like you, people would comment, and Leticia would smile without correcting them, because in her heart, Gabriel truly was her son. Oh, Leticia, what a sweet little thing. He has your smile, said Mrs. Carmen, a regular who always bought a few snacks. Thank you, Mrs. Carmen. He's the joy of my life, Leticia would reply, her chest swelling with maternal pride. Gabriel was always clean, fragrant, and well dressed, even if his clothes were simple. Leticia made sure he was always impeccable. The neighbors in her building were divided in their opinions. Some, like Mrs. Antonia from the second floor, helped when they could, bringing clothes their grandchildren had outgrown or offering to watch Gabriel if Leticia needed to run an errand. That girl, is an angel, raising that baby all alone and with so much love," Mrs. Antonia would often say. But other neighbors whispered in the corners, inventing stories about who Gabriel's father might be. "That girl always seemed like such a saint, but look at her now, showing up with a baby out of nowhere," grumbled Mrs. Avon, who loved to gossip. "She must have gotten pregnant in secret and now wants to play the victim." Letícia heard the malicious comments, but she didn't care. What people thought couldn't change the love she felt for Gabriel. The baby grew quickly and healthily. At 1 month, he was already following objects with his eyes and would smile whenever he saw Letícia approach. At 2 months, he began to make sweet cooing sounds, as if he were trying to talk to her, and by the time he was 3 months old, Gabriel could already hold his head up and would laugh out loud when Letícia tickled him or played peekaboo. "You're growing up so fast, my love. Soon you'll be crawling all over the place and getting mommy into trouble," Letícia would say, watching Gabriel play with a rattle Mrs. Antonia had given him. He was a happy and healthy child, always smiling and rarely crying. It was as if he knew he had found a mother who loved him more than anything in the world. Letícia had developed a care routine that worked perfectly. She woke up early, bathed Gabriel, fed him, put him down for a nap, and used the time to make her pastries. In the afternoon, when Gabriel woke, she would play with him, give him another bath if needed, and then head to the square to sell her treats with the baby in her arms. People always stopped to chat and admire Gabriel, and many bought pastries just for a chance to be near him. "That boy is going to be a heartbreaker when he grows up, Letícia. Look at those clear eyes, that little smile," commented Mr. Joaquim, a doorman from a nearby building who was a loyal customer. "I just hope he becomes a good man, Mr. Joaquim. That's what matters most," Letícia would reply, always thinking about Gabriel's future and how she would raise him to be a person of integrity. At night, after Gabriel had nursed and was sleeping peacefully, Letícia would watch him in his makeshift crib, a drawer she had lined with soft blankets. She used these quiet moments to talk to God, thanking him for giving her such a wonderful son and asking for the wisdom to raise him in the best way possible. "Thank you, my God, for bringing Gabriel into my life. I don't know what I did to deserve such a special gift, but I promise I will care for him with all the love in my heart." She prayed every night, kissing the forehead of the baby who slept like an angel. Letícia never tired of admiring every detail of him. The tiny hands that clung to her finger, the chubby little feet she kissed constantly, the sweet baby scent he had after his bath. She knew every birthmark, every little fold of his skin, every expression he made. Gabriel was completely hers, and she was completely his. But Letícia had no idea that somewhere else in the city, a desperate man was searching for that very same baby, moving heaven and earth to find the son who had been stolen from him, and that very soon, the perfect world she had built with Gabriel would be shattered by a truth that would change everything forever. Enrique Montero hadn't slept properly in 3 months. The man who was once considered one of Sao Paulo's most successful entrepreneurs, owner of one of the country's largest construction firms, now spent his days and nights in a desperate search for the son who had vanished from his life as if he had never existed. At 35, Henrique had achieved everything a man could dream of in material terms, only to discover that none of it mattered when you lose the most important person in your life. Henrique's marriage to Camilla had been a mistake from the start, but he only realized it when it was too late. They met at a graduation party for her architecture school, and at the time, it seemed they had everything in common. Camilla was beautiful, intelligent, came from a wealthy family just like his, and everyone thought they were the perfect couple. But what Henrique didn't know was that behind her sophisticated facade, Camilla hid a drug addiction that would destroy everything they built together. The first few years of their marriage were tolerable. Henrique was focused on expanding the family business, and Camilla seemed content with the life of luxury he provided. They lived in a mansion in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, traveled the world, attended high society parties, and from the outside, they appeared to have a perfect life. But inside their home, things were very different. Camilla had changed after the wedding. She had become cold, distant, and Henrique felt he was married to a stranger. It wasn't until Camilla became pregnant, 5 years into their marriage, that Henrique discovered the truth about his wife. She had started using drugs in college. At first, only on weekends. Then, it became an addiction she managed to hide very well. During the pregnancy, she promised she would stop, and Henrique believed her because he desperately wanted to be a father. He had grown up without his mother, who died when he was 15, and he dreamed of giving his own child the love and presence he had missed. Henrique, I promise I will be an exemplary mother. Our son will have the very best life has to offer, Camilla would say, her hand on her growing belly. And Henrique believed her because he needed to. He had already chosen the name, Gabriel, decorated the nursery, and made all the plans to be the kind of father he never had. When Gabriel was born, Henrique fell hopelessly in love with his son. The baby was perfect, with clear eyes, just like his, and an angelic face that could melt anyone's heart. My son, you are the most precious thing that has ever happened to your dad, he would say, holding Gabriel in his arms, feeling a happiness he had never experienced before. But the joy was short-lived. In the first few days after the birth, Camilla was strange, agitated, and Henrique attributed it to the baby blues that many new mothers experience. He hired the best nannies, the best doctors, and did everything to ensure that Camilla and Gabriel received the best possible care. But one morning, when Gabriel was only 2 days old, Henrique woke up to an empty house. Camilla had fled, taking the baby with her, leaving behind only a note. I can't live this lie anymore. Don't look for me. The despair Henrique felt in that moment was something he could never explain. It was as if a piece of his soul had been torn away. My son! Where is my son? He screamed through the empty house, calling all of Camilla's acquaintances, her family, anyone who might have information. But no one knew anything, or if they did, they weren't talking. Henrique hired the best private investigators in the country, placed ads in newspapers, and offered a 1 million real reward for any information on Gabriel's whereabouts. He used every resource he had, every contact, every ounce of his influence. But it was as if Camilla and the baby had vanished from the face of the earth. Mr. Montero, we've found some traces of where your ex-wife has been. But we always arrive a day late, explained Ricardo, the private investigator he had hired. She's covering her tracks well, and from what we've gathered, she's using heavy drugs. That makes the investigation very difficult, because people like that act unpredictably. The nights were the worst for Henrique. He would stay awake in the nursery he had prepared for Gabriel, staring at the empty crib, the clothes that were never worn, the toys that were never touched. "Where are you, my son? Daddy is looking for you. Don't give up on me," he would say to himself, tears streaming down the face of a man who had been taught since childhood that men don't cry. Work had become torture. Enrique tried to focus in meetings, on the company's important decisions, but his mind was always on Gabriel. He had lost 30 pounds, couldn't eat, couldn't concentrate on anything other than finding his son. His employees were worried. They had never seen their boss in such a state. "Enrique, you need to take care of yourself. Gabriel will need a strong father when you're reunited," said Marina, his secretary of over 10 years, who had witnessed his anguish unfold. "I know, Marina, but I can't help it. I can't think of anything else," he would reply, running a hand over his weary face. After 2 months of fruitless searching, Ricardo brought news that made Henrique's heart pound. "Sir, we tracked your ex-wife. She was in an area downtown known for open drug use, but by the time we got there, she was gone. However, one of the people we spoke to said she had a baby with her a few weeks ago, but then she showed up alone. We're investigating what happened." "What do you mean, showed up alone? Where is my son?" Henrique asked desperately, grabbing the detective's arm. "We don't know yet, sir, but we're following every lead. Perhaps she left the child with someone. Or—" Ricardo let the sentence hang in the air, but Henrique understood the unspoken insinuation. The world, which had only just begun to right itself, crumbled around him once more. Just then, Ricardo's voice cut through the despair. "Mr. Montero, we have a lead. Your ex-wife was last seen in the East Zone, near a large housing complex. We're focusing our search there. If Gabriel is alive, we will find him." A volatile mix of hope and terror surged through Henrique. Hope that he might see his son again, and terror of what condition he might find him in, if he found him at all. 2 hours later, Henrique was walking the gritty streets of the neighborhood, Detective Ricardo by his side, when he saw something that made his heart stop. There, in a small, simple park, a young woman sat on a bench with a baby in her arms, softly singing a lullaby. Even from a distance, even after 3 months of sleepless nights and gnawing despair, Henrique recognized him instantly. The fair hair, the tiny face that haunted his dreams every night. "It's him, Ricardo. That's my son." Henrique's voice broke as he gripped the detective's arm. "Are you sure, sir? The distance could be deceiving," Ricardo cautioned. But Henrique was already moving, his heart hammering against his ribs so violently he thought it might burst from his chest. He knew. He knew every perfect detail of his son, every birthmark, every tiny expression. There wasn't a shadow of a doubt in his mind. That was Gabriel. Letícia was enjoying the afternoon sun. At 3 months old, Gabriel loved being outdoors, watching the trees and listening to the birds. She was humming a lullaby when she saw a man approaching. He was dressed in an expensive suit that looked utterly out of place. He was tall, with dark hair and light eyes, the same light eyes as Gabriel. He walked with an expression of someone who had just seen a ghost. "Excuse me," Henrique said, his voice trembling as he reached the bench. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Letícia looked at him, puzzled, and instinctively pulled Gabriel closer. Something in the way this man stared at the baby set her on edge. "What do you want to talk about?" she asked, already planning her escape. It's about the baby in your arms, Henrique managed to say. I need to know. How did you get him? The blood drained from Letitia's face. It was the question she had always dreaded. Why do you want to know? Who are you? She demanded, rising from the bench and taking a step back. My name is Henrique Montero, he said, pulling out his phone and showing her a picture. And I have every reason to believe that this baby is my son Gabriel, who was kidnapped from my home 3 months ago. The photo was of a newborn, a perfect, undeniable match for the baby in her arms. Letitia glanced from the screen to Gabriel's face. The resemblance was staggering. This can't be happening, she whispered, her legs threatening to give out. I found him, abandoned in the trash, nearly dead. I've cared for him for 3 months, as if he were my own. He is my son, she cried, tears streaming down her face as she kissed Gabriel's forehead. The baby, sensing the tension, began to wail. Seeing the raw desperation in her voice, Enrique's own heart fractured. He could see she truly loved Gabriel, that she had cared for him with devotion. The baby was healthy, clean, clearly treated like a prince. I don't want to take him from you, Enrique said, his voice breaking. I need to understand what happened. Please, can you tell me how you found him? Leticia was trembling, but something in the man's tone made her believe him. Through racking sobs, she told him everything. The stormy night, the cry from the dumpster, the terrible state she'd found him in, how she had nursed him back to health. I saved his life, she finished, looking at Enrique with a mixture of defiance and pleading. If I hadn't found him that night, he would have died. Henrique listened to every word, his heart shattering. His ex-wife hadn't just abandoned their son. She had literally thrown him in the trash to die. And this young woman, this complete stranger, had saved his life. What's your name? He asked, wiping at the tears that flowed freely down his cheeks. Leticia, Leticia Santos, she replied, still holding Gabriel tightly. And you may be his biological father, but I am his mother in my heart. I'm the one who woke up with him, who cared for him when he was sick, who taught him how to smile. You can't just show up and take my son from me. I don't want to take him from you, Leticia, Enrique repeated. And for the first time since he'd lost Gabriel, he felt a flicker of hope. You saved my son. You did what I couldn't do. You protected him. You are an angel God placed in his life. He paused, looking down at Gabriel, who had stopped crying and was now staring at him with curious eyes. Could we go somewhere more private to talk? Leticia hesitated, but something about this man made her trust him. We can go to my apartment, she said finally, but I'm not leaving his side. No matter what you say, Gabriel stays with me. The walk was silent. Gabriel slept peacefully in her arms, oblivious to the drama swirling around him. When they arrived at the small apartment, Henrique was struck by its simplicity, but also by the cleanliness and love with which everything was arranged. There was a special corner for Gabriel, with a makeshift crib and neatly folded clothes. How did you afford all this? He asked. I sold everything I had, Leticia answered with pride. My grandmother's ring, the television, even furniture. Gabriel has never wanted for anything with me. Henrique looked around the sparse room again. This young woman had sacrificed everything for his son. Leticia, he said, his voice thick with emotion as he knelt on the floor before her. I am begging you, please don't take my son away from me. I know you saved him when I failed. But please, Let me be a part of his life. Let me take care of you both. And in that moment, seeing a billionaire on his knees, pleading for something his money could not buy, Letícia understood that her life would never be the same. Henrique remained on his knees, tears tracking down his face, as Letícia watched him in silence. Please get up, she said finally. You don't have to kneel for me. I understand. You're his father, and you must be in so much pain. Henrique stood, trying to compose himself, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from Gabriel. I need to know more about you, Letícia, he said. Do you have family? How did you learn to take care of a baby so well? I'm an orphan, she began. My parents died when I was 16. My grandmother raised me until she passed away when I was 19. Since then, I've been on my own. What was your grandmother's name? He asked. Rosa Santos. She worked as a nanny for wealthy families. My mother's name was Maria Santos. She was a nanny, too. At the name Maria Santos, Henrique felt as though he'd been punched in the gut. He shot up from his chair. It can't be, he muttered, running his hands through his hair. It can't be a coincidence. What is it? Did you know my mother? Letícia asked, her own heart beginning to race. Henrique stopped pacing and stared at her, his expression one of pure disbelief. Maria Santos was my nanny from the time I was 8 until I was 15. She took care of me after my mother died. The words came out slowly. She practically raised me. She was like a second mother to me. Letícia was speechless. She gently placed Gabriel in his crib. Tell me about her, she whispered. I want to know everything. Maria was an incredible woman, Henrique began, his voice thick with emotion. She came to our house when I was shattered by my mother's death. I was an angry little boy, but she had infinite patience. He glanced at Gabriel. When I turned 15, my father decided I didn't need a nanny anymore. She gave me a tight hug, told me she would always be cheering for me, and then she was gone. I never saw her again. She died when I was 5, Letícia explained. My grandmother used to tell me she always spoke of a special boy she had cared for, a rich boy who had lost his mother, a boy she loved as if he were her own son. She stared at Henrique in awe. It was you. She was talking about you. Henrique sat down again, taking her hands in his. I looked for Maria for years, to thank her for everything. I hired detectives. I searched everywhere. But I could never find her. His voice broke. And now, I discover that her daughter saved my son. God works in strange ways, doesn't he? Letícia whispered. My mother took care of you when you were a child, and now I'm taking care of your son. It's as if it was all planned from the very beginning. As if on cue, Gabriel woke and began to cry softly. May I hold him? Henrique asked timidly. Letícia hesitated for only a second before gently passing Gabriel to him. The baby instantly quieted in his father's arms. Hello, my son. Daddy missed you so much, Henrique whispered, kissing Gabriel's forehead. You're so beautiful. He's a very good baby, Letícia said, watching them. But I can't imagine my life without him. And I can't imagine taking him away from you, Henrique replied, his gaze meeting hers over the top of the baby's head. You're not just the person who saved my son. You are the daughter of the woman who saved me when I was a child. This isn't a coincidence, Letícia. This is destiny. What are we going to do? Letícia asked, a mixture of fear and hope swirling within her. How are we ever going to resolve this? Henrique looked at her, then at Gabriel, and felt a profound sense of clarity. He had found not just the son, but the very person who could complete the family he had always dreamed of. Maria Santos's daughter had appeared in his life like a gift from fate, and he would not let this opportunity slip away. He had spent the entire night awake, replaying his conversation with Letícia, marveling at the incredible discovery that connected them through her mother. He had returned to his empty mansion with a heart torn between the joy of finding Gabriel and the fear that a custody battle would only traumatize the child further. The next morning, he called Letícia and asked to see her again. He had a proposal, one that could solve everything for everyone. "I've thought of a solution," Enrique said, the moment he stepped into Leticia's apartment. She was bathing Gabriel in a small basin, and the baby was smiling, splashing his tiny hands in the water, completely at ease. "But before I say anything, I want you to know that I completely respect the love you have for Gabriel, and I would never do anything to hurt either of you." Letícia finished bathing the baby, wrapped him in a fluffy towel, and settled him on her lap before answering. "Go on, I'm listening," she said, trying to control the anxiety that seized her whenever she thought of losing him. The night had been difficult for her, too, filled with nightmares of men in suits coming to take her son away. "I want to propose marriage," Henrique said all at once, without preamble. "A marriage between us, so that Gabriel can have a complete family with a mother and a father together." Letícia was so stunned she nearly dropped Gabriel. "Are you out of your mind? We barely know each other," she exclaimed, getting up from the bed and starting to pace the small apartment. "I know it sounds crazy," Henrique said, trying to remain calm. "But think about it. Gabriel needs stability. He needs to grow up in an environment where he knows his parents respect each other and are working together for his well-being. I can offer financial security for you both, and you can continue to be the mother he knows and loves." He paused, watching how she instinctively rocked Gabriel in her arms. "It would be a marriage of convenience, at least in the beginning." "A marriage of convenience? Henrique, I'm 21 years old, and I've never even really dated anyone. I can't just marry a stranger, even for Gabriel." Letícia said, her heart hammering in her chest. "Besides, I'm a virgin. I've never been with a man. How do you expect me to get married just like that?" Enrique's heart ached when she mentioned she was a virgin. There was something in her purity and honesty that touched him deeply, that made him want to protect her from all the ugliness in the world. "I would respect your boundaries completely," he said with sincerity. "It would just be a piece of paper, a way to ensure Gabriel has legal and emotional security. We would live in the same house, but you would have your own space, your own privacy." "And what would I get out of it?" Letícia asked, not out of greed, but because she needed to understand every aspect of the proposal. "Gabriel would have everything a child could dream of: education, healthcare, opportunities. You would never have to worry about money again and could dedicate yourself completely to him," Enrique explained. "Furthermore, you would be legally protected. No one could ever question your right to be Gabriel's mother." Gabriel began to fuss, and Letícia automatically started humming a lullaby to calm him. Henrique watched the scene, a pang of emotion hitting him as he saw how natural she was in the role of a mother. "You truly love him, that's obvious," he said softly, "and I know he loves you too. It would be cruel to separate you now." "But what if it goes wrong?" What if we can't live together? What if you meet someone else and want to get married for real? Letícia asked, her voice thick with doubts and fears. Gabriel had calmed down and was now staring at Henrique with his clear little eyes, as if studying the father he had never known. We would put everything in writing, Henrique replied. Your rights would be guaranteed, and so would Gabriel's. But I truly believe we can make this work. Why are you so sure? She asked, curious about his confidence. Because you are Maria Santos's daughter, Henrique said simply. She taught me how to recognize people of character, people you can trust. And I see her in you, in the way you care for Gabriel, and how you've given up everything for him. He stepped closer and gently touched Gabriel's small face. Besides, Maria always said that God brings the right people together at the right time. Tears welled in Leticia's eyes. There was something about Enrique's proposal that, despite its madness, made a strange kind of sense. Gabriel needed stability, and she knew that, alone, she could never give him everything he deserved. Where would we live? She asked, starting to consider the possibility seriously. In my home. It's a large mansion. You would have your own room. Gabriel would have a beautiful nursery I had already prepared for him, Enrique explained, a flicker of hope in his eyes. You could decorate it however you like, make any changes. It would be your home too, he paused, and you would never again have to worry if Gabriel has diapers, medicine, or anything else he needs. I need to think, Letícia said finally, looking down at Gabriel, who had fallen asleep in her arms. This is a monumental decision, one that will affect the rest of our lives. I can't decide just like that, Enrique nodded, understanding completely. Of course, you're right. But while you think, will you let me take care of you both? He asked. I can have someone bring diapers, food, whatever you need. You shouldn't have to be worried about money right now. Letícia glanced around the nearly bare apartment, feeling a mix of gratitude and wounded pride. I've always managed to care for Gabriel on my own, she said with dignity. It may not be luxurious, but he's never wanted for anything with me. Henrique saw he had touched a nerve and quickly corrected himself. I know, and I deeply admire your strength and determination. I just want to help because you're both important to me now. Letícia spent the rest of the day weighing Henrique's proposal. On one hand, the idea of marrying a stranger terrified her. On the other, she knew Gabriel deserved to have his father in his life, and that she could never offer him the opportunities Henrique could. When Gabriel woke from his afternoon nap and gave her that toothless grin that melted her heart, she knew her answer. I accept, she said, when Enrique called late that afternoon, but on one condition. If at any point this isn't working for Gabriel, for his emotional well-being, we revisit the agreement. On the other end of the line, Henrique felt a wave of relief and nerves. He was about to start a new life with a woman he barely knew, but already respected profoundly. Moving into Henriquez's mansion was like stepping into another world. The house was 10 times larger than any place she had ever lived, with enormous bedrooms, bathrooms that looked like spas, and a kitchen bigger than her entire apartment. Henrique made a point of showing her Gabriel's room first, the one he had decorated with so much love before the baby was even born. Letícia nearly cried when she saw the perfect space, prepared by a father who had loved his son before he even knew him. This is the nursery I prepared for him, Henrique said. opening the door to a room painted in soft shades of blue and white. It held a beautiful wooden crib, a comfortable armchair for feeding, and shelves filled with children's books and educational toys. You can change anything you want. Just say the word. Gabriel was asleep in Leticia's arms, but when she placed him in the new crib, he snuggled into the soft sheets as if he had always slept there. It's perfect, Leticia whispered, running a hand along the side of the crib, imagining all the nights Gabriel would spend growing up there. Did you do all this yourself? Henrique nodded, a little embarrassed. I used to spend hours in here when Camilla was pregnant, imagining what it would be like when he was born. I never thought he would arrive like this, but the important thing is that he's here. The civil wedding took place a week later in a simple courthouse ceremony, with only 2 witnesses Enrique had called from his office. Leticia wore a simple white dress she had bought herself, and Henrique, an elegant dark suit. When the judge asked if she took Henrique as her husband, Leticia looked at Gabriel, sleeping in his stroller beside them, and replied, I do, thinking only of her son's future, not of the romance that didn't exist between them. The first few days of living together were strange and full of adjustments. Leticia would wake in the middle of the night when Gabriel cried, and Henrique would always appear at her door moments later, asking if she needed anything. You don't have to wake up every time, she would say, a little self-conscious about breastfeeding in front of him. I want to help. I've missed the first 3 months of my son's life. I don't want to miss anything else, he would reply, sitting in a chair and simply watching the beautiful connection between her and Gabriel. Henrique had hired a housekeeper and a cook, but Leticia insisted on personally handling everything related to Gabriel. She prepared his bottles when he started on formula, washed his clothes, gave him his baths, changed his diapers. You can relax a little, Leticia. There are people here to help, Henrique would say, but she would just shake her head. I like taking care of him. It's how it's always been, and it's how I feel useful, she would explain, folding Gabriel's tiny clothes with the same care as always. Henrique would watch her, a growing admiration swelling in his chest for this young woman who had sacrificed everything for a child who wasn't even biologically hers. There was something about her devotion that touched a part of his heart that had been closed for a long time. The evenings became the most special part of their new routine. After Gabriel was fed and asleep, Leticia and Henrique would sit in the living room and talk about their day, their plans for the baby, about life in general. Did you always want to have children? She asked during one of these conversations, curious to know the man she had married better. Always, especially after I lost my mother. I wanted to build the family I never had the chance to complete, he answered. What about you? Did you always dream of being a mother? Yes, but I imagined it differently. I thought I would fall in love, date, have a church wedding, get pregnant. The whole package, Leticia said with a sad little smile. But when I found Gabriel, I discovered that being a mother isn't about how a child comes to you. It's about the love you feel for them. As the weeks went by, Henrique began to show a softer, more affectionate side. The first thing he did when he came home from work was look for Gabriel and Leticia. Where's my prince? He would say, scooping Gabriel into his arms and covering his little face with kisses. The baby always smiled when he saw his father, and it was beautiful to see the bond between them growing day by day. He's starting to recognize you, Leticia commented one afternoon, watching Gabriel reach his little arms out for Henrique the moment he walked in. I lost so much time, Henrique said with a note of sadness. 3 months might seem like a short time, but in a baby's life, it's an eternity. Letitia saw the pain in his eyes and felt an urge to comfort him. It wasn't your fault you missed it. And the important thing is that you're here now. You're present in his life, she said, placing a light hand on his arm. It was the first time she had touched him voluntarily, and they both felt a different kind of spark in that brief contact. Henrique looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. For a moment, it seemed as if they might kiss, but Leticia pulled away quickly, flustered by her own reaction. I need to get Gabriel's bath ready, she said, almost running from the room. Henrique stood there, sensing that something between them had just shifted, but respecting the space she clearly needed. Their meals began to feel truly like a family's, with Gabriel in the high chair Henrique had bought. The three of them together. He's growing so fast, Leticia would comment, watching Gabriel try to grab the pieces of fruit she offered. He'll be crawling around and getting into everything soon, Henrique would say, laughing when Gabriel deliberately threw food on the floor. Henrique, Leticia said during one of these meals, can I ask you a personal question? He nodded, curious. What was your marriage to Camilla like? Were you happy? The question caught him by surprise, but he decided to be honest. No. I thought I was, but I realize now that we never had a real connection. It was more of a partnership than a marriage. And now, do you miss having a real wife? She asked, nervously fiddling with her napkin. Enrique looked at her and then at Gabriel, who was grinning, covered in pureed fruit, and felt his heart clench. I have a wife, he said simply. It may not be traditional, but you take care of me, of our home, of our son. You are my wife. That night, after putting Gabriel to bed, they sat on the sofa to watch a movie, but ended up talking all night instead. Henrique told her about the loneliness he used to feel in the mansion before they arrived, and Leticia spoke of how frightening, yet wonderful, it was to suddenly have a family. As she grew sleepy, she leaned her head against his shoulder without realizing it. Henrique didn't have the heart to wake her. He stayed there all night, with Leticia sleeping in his arms, thinking about how this pure, courageous young woman had completely changed his life in such a short time. For the first time since meeting Leticia, Henrique allowed himself to dream. He dreamt of the possibility of a true love, of a real family, of the kind of happiness that had always seemed impossibly out of reach. But the peace of his newly formed family was shattered on a Sunday morning. At 8 o'clock, the mansion's doorbell began to ring, sharp and insistent. Enrique went downstairs to answer it, assuming it was a delivery. Instead, he found his younger brother, Fernando, and his wife, Patricia. The looks on their faces were not those of guests paying a social call. They had come for a reckoning. We need to talk, Henrique, Fernando said, foregoing any greeting. About this farce you're playing. What farce? Henrique asked, his stomach tightening. He already knew this would not be pleasant. Fernando and Patricia swept past him into the living room, uninvited, their eyes scanning the space as if searching for evidence of a crime. This whole business of marrying some girl from the slums and giving her the family name, Patricia said, her voice dripping with disdain. Everyone is talking, Henrique. You're turning our family into a joke. Leticia was coming down the stairs, holding Gabriel in her arms, when she heard the raised voices. She froze midway, clutching the baby tighter and listened as every poisonous word filled the air. She is my wife and the mother of my son, Henrique said, his tone firm as steel, and they deserve the same respect you do. Mother of your son? Henrique, for God's sake, wake up, Fernando exclaimed. This girl shows up out of nowhere with Gabriel, spins some story about finding him in the trash, and you just believe her? She was probably involved with the kidnappers from the very beginning. Fernando's words struck Letícia like a physical blow. Her heart hammered against her ribs with indignation. You don't know what you're talking about, Henrique said, his patience beginning to fray. Letícia saved Gabriel's life. If it weren't for her, I would never have found my son. Patricia let out a small, malicious laugh. Saved him? Or kidnapped him, and then had a change of heart? Henrique, you are being played by a gold digger who saw the opportunity of a lifetime. Letícia could not stay silent a moment longer. She descended the rest of the stairs and walked into the living room. Gabriel nestled in her arms, her chin held high with a dignity they could not touch. I may not be rich like you, she said, looking directly at Patricia, but I have never done a dishonest thing in my life. And if you want to know the truth about how I found Gabriel, I can tell you every single detail. Ah, how convenient. The opportunist decides to make an appearance, Patricia sneered. Spare me the Cinderella story, darling. Everyone knows you hit the jackpot and clawed your way into it. As if sensing the tension, Gabriel began to cry in Leticia's arms. She instinctively started to rock him, murmuring softly to calm him. Enough, Henrique roared, stepping between his family and Letícia. You came into my home to disrespect my wife and frighten my son. I will not tolerate it. Fernando looked at his brother with profound disappointment. Henrique, you're blind. This woman has bewitched you somehow, but everyone else can see she's just a user. The only thing you can see is your own prejudice, Letícia said, finding a courage she didn't know she possessed. You look at me, and all you see is a poor girl who doesn't deserve to be here. But I love Gabriel more than either of you will ever love anyone in your entire lives. Her words were spoken with such raw sincerity that, for a moment, even Patricia was left speechless. Love? What kind of love appears overnight? Fernando pressed. You want us to believe that a stranger found a baby and instantly became a model mother? That doesn't happen, Henrique. Something is wrong with this story. Gabriel had stopped crying and was now staring at his uncle with a serious expression, as if he too disliked the man. I'll prove it to you, Letícia said. She handed Gabriel to Henrique and left the room. She returned a few minutes later with a folder containing every document related to Gabriel. There were photos from the day she found him, prescriptions for medicine she had bought, receipts for diapers and clothes. There was even the medical report from when she had finally managed to take him to a health clinic. Look at these photos, she said, spreading them across the coffee table. This is Gabriel on the first day, nearly dead from cold and malnutrition. These were the clothes he was wearing, filthy and damp. These are the receipts for everything I bought him by selling my own belongings. The evidence was irrefutable. The images showed a baby who had been left to die and a young woman who had sacrificed everything to save him. Patricia looked at the photos, and for the first time, her composure cracked. This doesn't prove anything, she stammered, her conviction faltering. Anyone can take pictures and make up a story. Make it up? Letícia asked. tears of rage welling in her eyes. Make up the fact that I woke up every few hours for 3 months to care for him? Make up that I sold my grandmother's ring to buy diapers? Make up that I managed to breastfeed him, even though I was a virgin, because my body reacted to the maternal love I felt? Her voice was broken but unwavering. Seeing Leticia's anguish, Henrique was overcome with a fury he had never known. You've said more than enough, he growled, rising to his feet and pointing to the door. I want you out of my house. Now. And don't come back until you learn to respect my family. Fernando started to protest, but Henrique was immovable. Out! After they had gone, Leticia collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably. They're right, she choked out. I don't belong here. I'm just a poor girl who has no place in your world. Henrique sat beside her, pulling her into an embrace while still holding Gabriel. Don't ever say that. You belong here more than any of them, he said, stroking her hair. You saved my son. You built a family with me. You taught me what true love is. They are the ones who don't deserve to be part of our lives. Leticia wept in his arms, feeling for the first time that she truly had someone to protect her. But their troubles were only just beginning. On Monday, Henrique received a phone call that made his blood run cold. Dr. Henrique, it's Ricardo, the detective. I have some news you're not going to like. Your ex-wife is back. She's clean, and she wants custody of Gabriel. The news was a lightning strike from a clear blue sky. Camilla, his ex-wife, had spent 3 months in an expensive rehabilitation clinic. She had overcome her addiction and now claimed she had been the victim of a temporary psychotic break when she abandoned her son. She's hired the best lawyers in São Paulo, Ricardo explained. She's arguing that she was coerced by the drugs, that she wasn't responsible for her actions. This can't be happening, Leticia whispered when Henrique told her. Gabriel was asleep in his crib, oblivious to the drama swirling around him. She left him to die. How can she want him back now? Henrique took her hands, trying to project a confidence he did not feel. We will fight, he said. We will prove that Gabriel is better off with us, that you are his true mother. But deep down, he was terrified of losing his son all over again. The battle ahead would be the hardest of their lives, and the future of the family they had built depended on convincing a judge that love was stronger than biology. The custody hearing for Gabriel stretched over 2 intense months. Intense court sessions. Every detail of Leticia's life was scrutinized by Camilla's lawyers. Camilla herself appeared in court, completely transformed, dressed in expensive clothes, her hair perfectly styled, delivering a rehearsed speech about how she had overcome her addiction and was now ready to be a mother. I was sick, Your Honor, she would say to the judge, tears welling in her eyes. The drugs made me do terrible things, but I am cured now, and I want my son back. Leticia watched from the witness stand, holding Gabriel, who was now 6 months old, a happy, healthy child who clearly recognized her as his mother. She may be clean now, Henrique's lawyer argued, but Gabriel spent the first days of his life with Leticia Santos, who saved him from certain death and has been his mother in every sense of the word. But I am the biological mother, Camilla countered, looking at Gabriel with an expression that was more possessive than maternal. He is my flesh and blood, and now that I am well, I can care for him as he deserves. During one of the hearings, when she tried to approach Gabriel, the baby began to wail desperately, only calming down when he was back in Leticia's arms. The decisive moment came when the judge called Leticia's neighbors to testify. Dona Antonia, the elderly woman from the second floor, who had often helped with Gabriel, took the stand with quiet resolve. Your Honor, I saw this girl care for that baby like no mother I've ever known. She would wake up in the middle of the night. She would sing to him. She never complained once. That baby was dying when she found him. And look at him now. Donna Carmum, who used to buy pastries from Leticia in the square, also gave her testimony. Your Honor, this young woman sold everything she had to buy diapers for the baby. I saw her cry with joy when he gave his first smile. I saw her teach him how to clap his hands. That is a real mother, not someone who throws their child in the trash. But it was the testimony of Dr. Marcello, the pediatrician from the health clinic who had treated Gabriel. That changed everything. When Leticia first brought Gabriel in, he was malnourished and showed clear signs of neglect. She had no money for a private consultation, but she followed every piece of my advice. More importantly, she was breastfeeding the baby, despite being a virgin. This only happens in cases of extreme maternal love. What do you mean, breastfeeding while a virgin? The judge asked, intrigued. Your Honor, it is a rare but real phenomenon called induced lactation, the doctor explained. When a woman has intense contact with an infant and develops a deep maternal love, the body can begin to produce milk naturally. It is the scientific proof of the emotional bond between her and the child. Camilla was visibly shaken by this testimony. She knew she had never been able to breastfeed Gabriel in the few days she had him, and now she learned that a stranger had done what she, the biological mother, could not. That doesn't mean anything, she said nervously. I was sick. I wasn't in any condition to breastfeed. The judge then asked to observe Gabriel's interaction with each woman. When Camilla tried to hold him, Gabriel cried out and reached desperately for Leticia. The moment he was back in her arms, he settled instantly and smiled, gurgling contentedly. The difference was stark and moved the entire courtroom. There is something else I must reveal, Henrique said, asking for permission to speak. Leticia is the daughter of Maria Santos, who was my nanny during my childhood. She practically raised me after I lost my mother. Maria taught me the values I hold today, and I see those same values in her daughter. This is not a coincidence, it's fate. The judge sat in thought for several long minutes, looking from Gabriel, happy in Leticia's arms, to Camilla, who appeared increasingly desperate. My decision is based on the best interests of the child, he said finally. Although Camilla is the biological mother, it is evident that Gabriel recognizes Leticia as his mother, and it was she who ensured his survival and healthy development. Custody is awarded to Enrique Montero and Leticia Santos, the judge announced. Camila will be granted supervised visits, but Gabriel will remain with the family that raised him, where he is clearly safe and loved. Leticia began to cry with relief, covering Gabriel with kisses. The baby laughed, amused by his mother's tears. Camilla tried to appeal, but her own lawyers advised her to accept the decision. She left the courtroom in tears, finally understanding that she had forever lost the right to be Gabriel's mother when she chose to abandon him. He was my son, she murmured to Henrique on her way out. He is your son, Henrique replied firmly, but now he has a real mother. That night at home, after putting Gabriel to sleep in the crib that was now officially his forever, Enrique and Leticia sat together on the living room sofa. I can't believe it's over, she said, still processing the victory. Gabriel is really ours now. Henrique looked at her, his heart overflowing with love for the courageous woman who had fought so fiercely for their son. Letícia, he said, taking her hands in his, I need to tell you something. This marriage started as one of convenience, but you've become so much more to me than a partner. You've become the love of my life. Leticia's heart soared. She felt the same way, but had been too afraid to admit it. I love you too, Henrique, she whispered, meeting his gaze. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, you stopped being just Gabriel's father and became the man I want by my side forever. They kissed for the first time, a kiss that was not for show, but one that was sweet and full of the promise of a future. Will you renew our vows? Henrique asked, caressing her face. Marry me for real this time, for love, in a church, with a white dress, just like you've always dreamed. Letícia smiled through her tears and nodded. I'll marry you every day if I have to. 6 months later, in the same church where she used to pray alone, Letícia walked down the aisle in a wedding gown, carrying Gabriel in her arms. The little boy wore a tiny suit and bow tie, grinning at all the guests as if he knew it was a special day. When the priest asked if she took Henrique to be her husband, she looked at the man who had become her partner and her best friend, and replied, I do, with all the love in the world. Gabriel was raised in a home overflowing with love, never knowing he had once been abandoned. He knew only the unconditional affection of two parents who adored him. And when he turned 2, he was gifted a baby sister, born to Letícia and Henrique, completing the family that God had planned for them from the very beginning. The orphan girl who found a baby in the rain had, in turn, found her own happily ever after. And so concludes the story of Letícia and Gabriel. It is a story that teaches us that true love is not defined by bloodlines or fortunes, but by surrender, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication. Letícia discovered that motherhood isn't about having carried a child, but about loving, without limits, the one that God places in your arms. And Enrique learned that happiness is not found in the wealth we accumulate, but in the special people we choose to share our lives with. Sometimes, we must endure the storms to be prepared for the miracles that await. The rain that brought Gabriel into Leticia's life was, in truth, a blessing in disguise. And the love that blossomed between the three of them became the very foundation of a family blessed from above. If this story has touched your heart, please leave a like below, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our stories. Tell me in the comments, which moment moved you the most? I'm truly curious to know what part resonated most deeply with you. And please, don't forget to share this story with someone who needs a reminder of the power of true love. May you and your family be blessed, and may you always hold on to the faith that the best days are still to come. Until the next story.